What's up, folks? It's another Yami Noob Q&A. This is my chance to get a little unplugged, hang out with you guys, answer some questions, and try my best to add a little bit of value to the motorcycling community. So let's start off with our first question. It's one that I saw come up quite a bit in the last upload. C. Perun Sunkar 7363 asked, hey, what happened to Logan? And I actually prepared an answer for this one because I didn't want to mess it up. So I said that this question did come up quite a bit in the last Q&A, and I wanted to address it professionally and simply. Logan doesn't work for the channel anymore. And out of respect for his privacy, I'm not going to comment on any details or on why he left because I just don't think that's appropriate in a public setting like this. But rest assured, Logan and I are on very good terms. There's no bad blood between us. And I think Logan is a super creative and driven guy. I think he's going to excel in any new challenge that he sets for himself. So we're wishing him all the best here at Yami Noob. Let's move on to the next question. Nacho Borello 5703 asked, hope this one makes it to a Q&A video. It did. What happened to the classical music in the videos? So this was kind of a calling card for the channel for a really long time. It was kind of what I started the brand on in a lot of ways. Way back in like 2016, actually even before that in 2015 when I first started making videos, I liked how classical music sounded in my videos because it kind of gave it this like jaunty sort of counterpoint to the kind of silly motorcycle stuff that was being shown. And I also incorrectly thought at the time that using classical music would not mean you'd have any problem with copyright because the music was so old. Well, it turns out that many performers have actually recorded those old pieces of music, and then a music label copyrights that performance specifically. So that's what I saw happen. I would get some piece from like Bach or Chopin, which are two of my favorite composers, and then I would ultimately have some sort of copyright claim, and I'd think, well, how the hell did that even happen? That this music's like 300 years old. But then really what it is somebody's specific performance got copyrighted. So we started using a service called Epidemic Sound that has a lot of different soundtracks and stuff, and it gave us a broader palette to be able to put different backing tracks. But I still really like classical music in my videos because I feel like that's like the classic Yami Noob energy. I actually have wanted to use our original piano sting in different videos again, but I used to only use those for moto vlogs, and I don't really do moto vlogs anymore. But comment down below if you remember that original little piano sting. It was like dun da 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 da, and that's Bach. It's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. All right, Mac Attack 2010 has asked, at what point do you feel comfortable with leaning a bike? What gives you confidence? Is this something that needs to be taught in an advanced course or track session with a coach? I really don't have much faith in my bike and leaning in corners. Granted, a 2024 Rebel 500 isn't a sport bike, but it is fun to ride fast on a slow bike. So this is a tough one, and I've kind of seen permutations of this question many times on my channel. It's kind of like, how do you get that front end feeling? How do you get confidence in leaning? And honestly, what it comes down to is seat time. The tires typically give you warning signs when they're about to let go. It's pretty rare for a tire to just immediately lose traction. There are cases where you might go over like an oil spill or a patch of gravel and you kind of immediately lose grip, but typically you can see that and then avoid that obstacle or that thing in the road. But under normal circumstances in dry conditions, a tire that's being pushed typically has what's called a quality of breaking away. Manufacturers kind of build that into tires, and different tires kind of have different qualities around that. Some snap a little bit faster, some are a little bit smoother, more predictable. Like for example, a Pirelli slick tire on track just has a beautiful kind of like slide and breakaway quality when you add gas, especially on a bike without traction control. You just kind of drift out of corners. You can feel it spin. It just kind of slides a little bit. That is a loss of traction, right? And so with leaning, you'll just eventually start to feel what it's like to be at lean with your bike when it's planted and stable on the side of the tire versus when you don't have that confidence, right? And it's just going to take a lot of seat time. As you alluded to in your question, going out to the track or trying more advanced techniques on controlled conditions will help you understand those limits and help you feel what the bike does at lean. But the only way you're going to feel it is just by practicing. So kind of a long-winded answer by saying just ride your bike more, and that feeling of leaning and confidence in leaning will come through. And as always, as I'm often want to tell you guys, loading up the front end with braking gives you more confidence because the front end is loaded, weight is being pushed into that front tire, which gives you more confidence. An unloaded front end does not feel very good. A loaded front end feels nice. Jason King 9401 says, "Hi Papa Yam, will you ever do a Harley giveaway? I think the people would be stoked to have a chance to win a classic American-style motorcycle. Plus, we want to see you ride, review, and talk up a cruiser." I really hate to break it to you, but especially on the last part of your question, I don't think anybody wants to see me talk about a cruiser, ride cruisers. This is something we've tried so much over the last 6 or 7, more than that, 7 years on this channel. I feel like I'm like the Japanese manufacturers trying to break into the cruiser market with like different metric cruiser offerings, and the cruiser guys are just like, no, we don't care. And I've noticed that it's the same thing with the content. The messenger is as important as the message itself, and people simply do not want to hear from me about cruisers. Sometimes if I have a more, hot take, so to speak, and something kind of fun to add to the discussion, people seem to gravitate well towards that. But, for me to seriously ride and consider and talk about cruisers, it does seem like nobody wants to really watch it. And beyond that, we have done 2 different Harley giveaways. In 2020, we did an Iron 883, which we turned into a 1275. Spite actually did all the work on that, which was really cool. The Hammer Performance Kit did a great job putting that thing together. And then we did a Sportster 1200 in 22. Both of those times, it was to try to break into the cruiser market a little bit, but none of them ever really took. We had very low entry counts for those giveaways, very low performance on videos, and it was very obvious that much like adventure content, dirt bike content, a bunch of stuff we've tried over the years, the audience kind of tells you, hey, stay in your lane, just make stuff about like street sport naked bikes, which is why I have pretty much only focused on that. I like a lot of different motorcycles. I think the Sportster is really neat. I like my air-cooled Ducatis. I like a lot of stuff. I'm actually considering getting an electric dirt bike now, of all things. I love a lot of stuff about motorcycling. I just can't talk about it on YouTube and try to make money from doing that because nobody cares. All right, Barabas688 has asked, "Dang, man, are you saying that people driving their SUVs don't want to drive their SUVs? Our infrastructure reflects what we want to drive. Bud, absolutely love my motorcycles, but you better bet I absolutely love our car-based infrastructure." You really do sound like a liberal or socialist in a lot of ways. Imagine that. Being motorcyclists in America is about freedom, and so is driving our four-wheeled vehicles. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't think I've ever heard someone unironically say they love car-based infrastructure. That has got to be rage bait. There's no way. So riddle me this. If America is about freedom on 2 wheels, why the hell can't I lane filter in Texas? Why am I stuck in traffic? Shouldn't I have the freedom to go between the lanes? Shouldn't I have the freedom to operate my vehicle in a way that makes sense? This whole freedom idea about car-based infrastructure is such propaganda, if I can be totally honest. Car companies and the industry has sold you this lie that owning a car is freedom. Owning a car is not freedom. Owning a car is slavery by way of debt, by way of the government registering you and tagging you and knowing where you live and being able to track your movement, especially now with all these flock cameras and stuff that are around, surveillance state. You're literally rolling around with a big thing on the back of your vehicle that says, "Hey there, here I am, look at me, look at who this person is," and you're telling me that's freedom. That's not freedom. That's not freedom of mobility. Limiting everybody to just one form of transportation is not freedom. It's not freedom at all. And this whole notion that I should love our car-based infrastructure, or that the infrastructure reflects what people want, which is also completely absurd. It reflects terrible zoning policies and terrible infrastructure planning from the government. The only reason we have all these highways here in the United States is because after World War II, we decided that we needed to be able to land a plane anywhere in the entire country, and so we built all these highways out. We trashed them through marginalized communities, built them through cities, destroyed communities, all in the name of the car. If you want to learn more about this stuff, there's a great channel called Not Just Bikes that proselytizes the good word of multimodal transport. I'm a big fan of that whole idea. I also don't hate the idea of cars. I just don't think we should live in a world where it's only cars all the time. That is my spiel on that. And if you saw yesterday's video, you would know all about that. And it's why I picked this question to include in today's video. Also, one more note. There is nothing liberal or socialist about wanting people to have more options in the way that they convey their bodies. Like, I don't think that that's liberal or socialist, right? Someone back me up in the comments on this. Is it a lefty position to want people to be able to get around their city with different transport options? I don't really think so. All right, next up, Josh Prog S8U. Should I replace the tires on my sport bike myself, or should I have them professionally mounted to the rim? Also, should I get touring tires? My roads are 90% straight lines. Thanks, Black Betty Yama Lamb. I like that. So I'm a huge fan of mounting up your tires yourself. I have what's called a Rabaconda. It's a mobile tire changing machine. I've had it for 4 years now, 3 years, something like that. I've probably done dozens of tire changes with it. Awesome, awesome piece of kit. Highly recommend it. Because what's super frustrating about changing tires on a motorcycle is that if you ride the bike into the dealership and you want them to just change the tires, it is going to cost you a small fortune to do that. Motorcycle tires, especially sport bike tires, have gotten pretty damn expensive over the last few years. I actually just replaced the tires on the giveaway Panigale V4 because I smoked them at the track. A new rear Pirelli Supercorsa SC, or the SC3, no, the SP, excuse me, SC3 is the DOT track tire. The SP was like $430, not mounted, just the tire. And then the front was another like 180 or 200 bucks. So over $600 for both tires. You're talking tax, mounting fees, disposal fees. If you ride the bike in, plus labor to pull the tires off and all that, it's close to $1,000 for 2 new tires for a proper sport bike. That's crazy. So if you want to save yourself some serious money, and if you are going through tires a lot, highly recommend you change your own tires with a Rabaconda or a tire changing system. But the thing is, you have to learn how to do it properly. You do not want to screw this up, because I talk about this a lot. The tires are the only 2 things contacting the ground on your motorcycle. They need to be mounted correctly, balanced correctly, make sure that the beads seat nice and easy. You don't want to mess up your rims either. I've seen guys go to town with tire irons and distort their rims, break the beads on the tires, do all kind of nasty stuff. You gotta learn the procedure correctly and do it correctly, because it is a critical safety item. So get the Rabaconda, get a tire balancing stand, get some wheel weights, learn how to do it the right way. I think I made a whole video talking about this too, so maybe look up Yami Noob, how to change a tire, and you can learn how I use my Rabaconda and do it. I just changed it the other day on my Ducati Monster. I used it for my Daytona. That thing saved me so much money over the long run, and it just feels really damn good to just like order your tires and then you just do them whenever you want, which is great. All right, Adrian H 2048. If someone wanted to use only a motorcycle for transportation, which one would you recommend? Could it be found for $10K or less? Absolutely, you can get a motorcycle as your only mode of transportation for less than $10,000. My question is, are you going to live in a dense urban environment, a more largely spread out metro area, or are you more rural? Because then that would kind of change the calculus a little bit. I think for someone who has access to major metro area, public transit, can kind of get around in different ways, you can honestly get away with a small, like, 300cc like Versys X300 with a bunch of storage in the back. That would be a pretty small, nimble, highly utilitarian motorcycle that wouldn't cost much money. It would sip a lot of fuel. That would kind of be my bet. Maybe a dual sport with a milk crate type of thing, like basically where you're trying to optimize for is something that's small, nimble, can be parked anywhere, and has a lot of storage options. So there's lots of bikes like that. If you live in a bigger metro area where you need a little bit more power, a little bit more capability, a little longer distance, any middleweight adventure bike would probably be awesome, because potholes would be no problem, longer distances no problem, very comfortable to ride. There's a reason you see a lot of those bikes in larger metro areas. Africa Twin, Tuareg 660. You could get something with 17s front and rear. Neither one of those are less than 10,000, but if you look around used, you can find ones that are close to that price. My buddy just picked up one for 12 grand that was like fully loaded and nice, Africa Twin. And then if you live rural, then it's kind of like, you're gonna need something that can really go the distance and probably be a little tough, because then you're talking about probably taking larger items back to your home and that sort of thing. I'd recommend something pretty big, probably like, GS or Goldwing, something like that, just because then you can traverse big, long distances, throw stuff on the back. I'm pretty sure you can tow stuff with a Goldwing if you really needed to. So that's kind of where my head's at. Search for ultimate versatility and ultimate storage if you're gonna have it be your only transportation. Who the F is Bryce has asked, howdy big yams, going from an R3 to a Daytona 675, 2006. What should I expect? Any tips? Well, that is exactly the transition that I did. I went from a Yamaha R3 to a Daytona 675. Mine was a Gen 2, it was a 2013 when I bought my first one. And then yours is a 2006, so that's first gen, but very similar. In terms of tips, respect the power. Take it easy, take it slow. That's something I didn't do. I went from the R3 after riding it for like 7 months. I was like, I'm ready for the Daytona. It was way too soon. I probably should have kept the R3 for like 2 years, honestly. I should have kept it for 2 years, did some track days with it. I never even did a track day with the R3. I was a total squid. I just went R3 straight to the Daytona, started riding around the highway, going fast, like super dumb stuff, which led to very obvious consequences in my very early riding career where I crashed the bike and had a bunch of problems and speeding tickets. It was like, the squid bingo. I was just tipping them off one by one. Very, very stupid way of existing with motorcycles. That's what I did. Don't do what I did. Learn from my mistakes. So I would say if you haven't gone to the Daytona just yet, keep the R3 as long as you can, a little bit longer than you would like to. Go take a track day with it. Go do some road trips with it. Really try to do as much as you can and really get familiar with that bike before you upgrade. And then when you do upgrade, just respect that power, respect the bike's capabilities, understand that the Gen 1 Daytona, you coming from the R3, your first big bike, that bike is so much more capable than you are, like way, 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 way more. I mean, I still can't really extract the full potential out of my Daytona on track. I think I could probably do about 80% of what it can do, that's probably my limit of my abilities. There's at least another 20% left on the table with that bike. So keep that in mind, that's what I would recommend. Action cameras revolutionized the way we create motorcycle videos. I mean, have you ever seen the old school setups that used to have back in the day just to get a POV shot on a motorcycle? We live in the future. The 360 camera has completely changed the game too. With the DJI Osmo 360, you shoot in 360 degrees in 8K resolution. That is completely unthinkable to the Gixxer squids from the 90s who strapped camcorders to the sides of their helmets. With a 1-inch 360 degree imaging, 100 minutes of continuous recording capabilities in 30 frames per second, this thing is a beast. And at just 183 grams, it's a pretty flexible recording solution for a single camera setup. You can mount it to a helmet, a tail section, or get creative and place it on the swing arm. Pro tip, if you want to make things look a little faster than they seem, get low to the ground and make sure you get motion blur. Speaking of which, you can add a motion blur effect in post-production inside the DJI Studio if you forget to set your shutter speed and settings correctly. We're huge fans of using the 360 to get those killer shots where it looks like we just have a small camera floating in front of the bike. Getting a perfect shot has never been easier with the 360. Check out the Osmo 360 in the link in the description below and get your 360 solution. Never miss a moment and capture the whole scene. Thanks to DJI for the support. Now let's get back to the show. All right, Johnny Corporate has asked, can you explain whilst country road riding, the steps when you brake and start to accelerate around a bend? I enjoy the use of whilst. That's very proper, very prim. So it's pretty simple. I think we tend to overcomplicate these things quite a bit, but you brake whenever you can't see the vanishing point of the corner anymore, or when it's getting closer to you, right? You brake when you're nervous, right? When you don't know what's coming around the corner, that's when brakes should be on, and you brake until you see your exit. And then when you see your exit and you get the bike pointed, you add gas and you pull it up. Basically, when it comes to back road riding, I kind of think of it this way. Like, if I'm in a corner, my brakes are on. Like, when I'm decelerating, it's brakes. And then when I'm accelerating, it's gas. And then the gas comes up in relation to the lean angle coming off. So, like, if I'm totally open, if I have no radius, right, and I'm totally straight, in theory it'd be wide open. You don't really want to be wide open on the road, right? If you're just hanging out, just riding, having a good time, maybe a little bit, but not too much, right? So it'd be gas, and then brake, gas, brake, gas. It's just this little game you play, right? If you have constant radius, right, it'd be neutral throttle and you're holding it through. All you're doing though when you're riding twisties is you're observing the vanishing point and looking for an exit. That's it, really. If you follow that rule, it's very unlikely you'll ever run out of road or go wide or, target fixate or go off the road. You know, if you're watching the road, the vanishing point, and you're observing if it's coming closer or further away, it's all about visibility, right? So if you see the exit open up, you see it, boom, it's closing on the gas, or excuse me, on the brakes, and then that's it. And then over time, you'll develop this sense of like how to just flow with any road. And you're always just evaluating and making decisions and putting those points together. And it's really cool. Once you have that skill, you can ride any road and have fun and enjoy it and know that you have so much margin available to you, which makes you feel really good when you ride. All right, B Marvel 6091. Hey, Yami Boob. Thank you. I love the channel and adore your content, but I can't stop hearing you mention Triumph a lot. Is a Triumph Triple honestly a GOAT and a go-to for you and possibly everyone else? So when I started riding motorcycles in 2015, Triumph's Triple was pretty unique still. Yamaha had only just recently released their FZ09 at the time as it was known. It turned into the MT09 here in North America, I think in 2014 or 15. And so those were kind of the only 3 cylinders really on the market. Nobody else was really doing anything. And then the XSR 900 came out, and then Triumph came out with other 3-cylinder models. You know, we've had the Speed triples, and then the Trident 660s, and now CF Moto's got their 3-cylinder. MB Agusta's got a 3-cylinder. They've had it from back then. Basically, 3 cylinders used to be in like the mid 2000s, early 2010s. They were just really unique and they were really special. They were usually very hopped up, very racy, very high revving. And a 3-cylinder at very high revs is super unique. It just sounds really nice. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Porsche GT3. It just has this like offbeat kind of sound to it that I was always gravitated towards. But the thing is, nowadays, it's not as unique anymore, and I don't know if I would say it's like the greatest of all time. That's quite a claim to fame to say a 3-cylinder is the greatest of all time. I think 3 cylinders represent a really nice balance for road riding in terms of torque and high revs and sportiness. It kind of meets the moment for all of them. Some people think that 3 cylinders, you know, it's the worst of all worlds because they don't rev out like a 4-cylinder. They don't have torque like a V-twin. I personally like to take a more positive spin on it and say that it is, you know, the best of all worlds. And they just have a very unique character, very cool sound, and a good amount of torque, good amount of top end power, and kind of work really well for a lot of use cases for people. And they're just really satisfying to use. I like them a lot, even though I don't own a triple. Well, I guess I own a triple. I have my Daytona race bike, track bike, but I don't really ride it as much as I should. Murdoch2 has asked, what scooter has the best vibes while riding? Like, which is just a great experience? That's easy for me. It's a Vespa. Specifically, just because I like the most power I can get. The 310 GTS, the one I reviewed, that blue one. They come in great colors. They have a great style. They're the iconic classic scooter. I mean, a lot of people, Vespa equals scooter. And to me, it's just a great iconic two-wheel vehicle. So much so that I'm actually getting one at the time of recording this video. In the next 2 days, I'm picking up a Vespa 310 GTS. Very, very excited about it. I got it in green. It's gonna be cool. Gonna make a lot of videos about it. Gonna be a scooter bro. Very excited about it. But I just think the Vespa just has the best vibes, man. Vespas make people happy when they see them. You know, I kind of use Vespas like the normie barometer. If like people think it's cool, then it's cool. Like the styling is cool, the design is cool. You know, I don't think it gets much better than that, personally. I know a lot of people might disagree. I know my buddy Brandon with his Honda Helix would probably say that that is the greatest of all time. Honda has made a lot of scooters, the Super Cub, for example, but I still, maybe I'm just Italian-pilled with my Ducati and my Aprilia and now my Vespa, but I don't know, there's just something about them. Sorry, there's just something about them. Chagral has asked, question, do you truly not understand why people like cruisers, or is that a bit you've been doing for so long you forgot it's a bit? I don't like sport bikes, but I totally get why other people do. It's just not for me. But your latest top 10 cruisers video shows that you absolutely and clearly just don't get it at all. This is a super funny question, mostly because it seemingly doesn't matter what I say. It's like people want to have a certain opinion of me and my beliefs, no matter what I say. I'm almost positive I have made videos talking about cruisers that, in my view, clearly demonstrates that I like intrinsically understand why people like them. To say that I am incapable of understanding why someone would ride a cruiser is quite frankly a little demeaning and insulting at worst, right? Like, I've been riding motorcycles for 11 years. I've ridden 211 different motorcycles in 13 different countries. To say that I don't understand why someone would get a cruiser is just pretty silly objectively, right? But to answer this question a little more thoroughly, I do think that, like, there is a blurring of the lines of, like, what is a bit and what is, like, actually me. I like to tell people that on YouTube, you know, Yammy Noob, the kind of presenter persona that you see, that is probably, like, my personality dialed up to, like, 120%. In real life, I am a pretty low-key, kind of chill, I'm a pretty, like, average guy, I would say. I would never behave the way I do on camera in a public setting. And also, you got to remember too, like, you know, when I'm presenting, it's a one-way thing. Like, I'm talking to the camera right now, whereas, like, people see you in a video and, like, they develop that parasocial thing and they see you talking, they're like, wow, this guy's talking to me. But you know, a conversation's a back and forth, and I'm the type of person where I tend to listen a lot more than I talk. I know that sounds crazy given my line of work, but I don't really want to just sit there and be the center of attention. I like listening to what people have to say, and I want to understand the things that they're saying, and I'm a big believer that other people always have something you can learn from them, and I've found that in listening, you get to where you want to go a lot faster. I like to listen way more than I like to talk, which again, is very funny given what I do for a living. But no, all that to say, I think that it would be crazy if I didn't understand why people like cruisers. I still, you know, this is just my personal opinion. I do still fundamentally believe that a cruiser is compromised in its geometry, and the styling of it can be had in other roadster style products that deliver more of what you want out of a motorcycling experience than a cruiser. I don't understand why you would choose a bike that has limited ground clearance, limited lean angle ability, bad value for money, poor technology. It's just, like you said, since sport bikes are not for you, cruisers are most certainly not for me because they don't fulfill anything I'm looking for from a motorcycle. If I were to ever get a cruiser, I mean, I joked in my Ducati Monster video that is my cruiser that I got because it's air-cooled and it's a V-twin and it's not particularly fast. But, you know, different strokes for different folks, horses for courses, and all that good stuff. Nathan Boyer2939 has asked a pretty in-depth question, but I think it could be good. Do you use the rear brake outside of low-speed stability and holding position when stopped? It seems functionally the same as engine braking since both apply to the rear wheel, so using the rear brake in addition seems an easy way to overload the tire. Interesting. Also, do you really rev match downshift all the way down when stopping quickly? Feels like the complexity and potential to accidentally skid the rear wheel makes it not worth it to just over smash in the gears at the very end with the clutch in. So, great question about the rear brake. Honestly, really, really good question. Lot to dig in there. There's a quote that I saw from Sylvain Guintoli, who was the 2012 World Superbike Champion, 2013 World Superbike Champion. Don't quote me on the exact year. I can't exactly remember. But basically, he said that he won the championship by never touching the rear brake. And on track, I've been able to ride pretty darn fast without ever really thinking about the rear brake. Now, that's not to say that the rear brake can't make you faster on track. That's not to say the rear brake is not applicable in riding on road when you're not just doing slow speed stuff. But I gotta be honest, I don't really use it all that much in my everyday riding. There are some times if I'm coming into a really tight hairpin turn, I might dab the rear brake just a bit right at the kind of like final slowest point of the corner just to get the bike hooked around a little bit quicker because I'm already going parking lot speeds. I think my brain just automatically goes for that rear brake when I'm going that slowly. But it is such a like delicate and virtually, you know, not necessary piece of equipment to use. And I know people say, oh, but the bike's got two wheels and, you know, braking the rear gives it 25% braking performance. Yeah, but on-road riding, you're not looking for 100% braking performance and you're not searching for that final bit. You can totally get away with, you know, applying front brake, loading the front tire, and slowing down for a corner at normal road speeds without using the rear brake. I think the rear brake would help you go a little bit faster, but again, it's a very sensitive and nuanced control. If you're riding a motorcycle without ABS, for example, even a little bit too much rear brake is going to cause the rear tire to skid. My Ducati Monster, for example, doesn't have ABS, and so the rear, it does not take very much at all for the rear to skid, and I kind of have fun with it because like I'll barely tap it and I skid the rear to a stop at stoplights and stuff, but that's just me being a bit of a goober. But, you know, in very aggressive downshifts, there's no reason to be doing that on road, so let's think about when you're on track. When you're on track and you're coming really hard into a braking zone, and you bang down like boom, 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 you know, down all those gears. I guess it would be up in that case if you're GP shift. But the slipper clutch is what's going to allow the rear wheel to not skid and jump and overload the tire as you're talking about. And a lot of riders, yeah, they barely downshift. They just let the clutch do all the work basically, and just like kind of jitter it out a little bit. I've never liked that. I do like, you know, I mean, you can downshift and rev match pretty darn quickly. If you want to see one of the masters at work at this, try to go and watch Casey Stoner riding in like the late 2000s, mid 2000s. Those bikes did not have auto blip at that time, and so you can actually see them rev matching as they're coming into corners. And Casey, there's a clip of him from Laguna Seca, 2007 or 8, I think, and you can just see the way he pulls in the clutch. He rapid fire pulls in the clutch, but lets it out slowly. But it's unbelievable to see how quickly he does it and the way he rev matches while he does it too. So it is definitely possible. It's just a skill issue more than anything else. But, you know, rear brake is one of those things that it's very controversial, causes a lot of opinions, causes a lot of debates and questions during track days and racing and all that stuff. Again, I've seen really fast guys. I ride pretty quick on track. I don't really use the rear brake. I don't have to really focus on it as much. And, you know, it's kind of like if it works for you, it works for you. I mean, some guys put the rear brake on the thumb over here on the handlebar and they swear that that's the thing that's going to get them to be able to do it. So just something to think about. All right, Donner Party 3622, great username, has asked, Yami, I've done one track day a couple years ago and loved it. I want to get into track riding more, but I also have 2 small kids. Hey, preaching to the choir here. You guys asking these questions as if you're me. How much free time or free weekends would I need to eventually get into club racing? I'm just not entirely sure about the time commitment involved and fear I may need to wait until my kids are older. So it depends on what kind of father you want to be. I made the choice that track riding and racing is just not an activity that I'm willing to use up my free time for at the moment. Club racing, typically, maybe you live really close to your track, but typically it involves going out for a whole weekend, usually Thursday through Sunday, come back on Monday, get back to work type of thing. Because there's practice on Friday, there's racing on Saturday and Sunday, and then you go home. So typically you leave on Thursday evening. That's what I always did. I would leave on Thursday evenings. I'd get to a hotel, settle in, wake up early in the morning, Friday practice, Saturday race, Sunday race, you know, do some sprint racing, endurance racing, whatever I was doing, and then back home on Monday. Here's the thing, you have 2 small kids, so you know how it is. Weekends are no longer your own time. To me, what's funny is my weekdays have become my free time. I do a lot of Yami Noob work, and I go out riding, and I do stuff because my kid is in daycare. My oldest is in daycare. Our littlest baby is at home with my wife, who is a stay-at-home mom. So since she's a stay-at-home with the baby, the other one goes to daycare, the weekdays are more free for me to do stuff, but there's no racing during like the weekdays, right? So I can't just like go to the track during the week. I'd have to go out for several days. I personally don't feel as comfortable leaving my wife to fend for herself with our 2-year-old and our 2-month-old, which is what we have. Maybe when your kids get a little bit bigger, it'll get easier and you can more reasonably turn to your wife and be like, hey, can I leave you alone with the kids for 3 days? And maybe you have a village, right? If you have, you know, grandma, aunties, uncles, cousins, whoever come and help out, kind of watch the kids, hang out a little bit, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. When they get even older, then maybe you could bring them to the track and they can watch you race and you can get them involved. I see people do that all the time at the racetrack. You know, a lot of people bring their families and it turns into a family thing, which is really fun. You know, with really, really little kids, maybe not the best idea, right? Because they need their nap times and it's very loud at the racetrack and it can be a little tricky. But maybe when they're like 4 or 5 years old, they're kind of past the nap time thing. Then you can bring them along in the RV and have some fun and do this whole thing, you know. I've seen a lot of people do that. So all that to say, depends on how small your kids are, depends on your schedule and your time commitments, but it's pretty tricky trying to do that with kids, I've found, at least at the stage that I'm at. Maybe it'll get easier over time. The MX Jaw has asked a kind of funny question here. Question, why aren't you using your Tuareg to do more cool stuff? It seems to me it's just a commuter to you, when you could do a lot more with it just changing tires. Put some Metzler, Karoo Extreme, or even just some Anarchy Wilds, and you could get back into laid-back off-road as you mentioned you're planning on. Yes, to go enduro with those require massive skills, but to rip some fast fire roads Dakar style is heaps of fun for me. Also, I do have a set of 17s for my Tenere, and I go do track days with the Supermoto style, and I enjoy a lot embarrassing chads on leader bikes. But that second usage is more about having fun than just one bike. But long story short, why don't you adventure yourself more off-road in your awesome trail bike? Thanks for the content. Well, I appreciate you saying that my bike is awesome, and thank you for the content. I love that. So here's the thing. I just talked about it in the previous one. I got 2 small kids. It's very difficult for me to make the time to go out and adventure and do all this sort of things and go ride out for 2-3 days in the bush and the fire roads and all that stuff. It's just a little tricky. I got to pick and choose sparingly during this time in my life, during the season of life where I have little kids. I got to pick and choose my moments of when I'm going to go out and have fun adventures, right? Like I just came back from Iceland. I was there for 4 days I was only in Iceland for 2 days. My total time was 4 days doing the Norton Atlas launch. My wife watched the kids with my mother-in-law. It was really great. I can't cash those in that often, right? That's like okay, I'll do this now, and then maybe 2-3 months from now, I might do another thing. So I have to pick and choose, right? I got invited to go to Italy to do some stuff with Moto Guzzi that I'm very interested in. I thought that would be cool too. Again, maybe I'll burn that one up and then kind of get her back a little bit too. So it's not that I don't want to. That sounds like a really fun time. I did that with my Ducati Scrambler. I've done that with my dual sports that I've owned throughout the years. It's a great time doing that with the bike, but it's really just that I'm in a season of life that is just a bit tricky with my little kids. And truthfully, what I'm looking to do right now, I talked about the WR250F that I wanted to get. What I'm really interested right now, if you look at my search history on YouTube, is I want to get what's known as like an ether weight electric trail bike. So sort of something like the Suron Ultra B or the Zero XE. And the reason I want to do that is because that's something I could do intraday while my kid is at daycare and my wife isn't too stressed out. You know, I can go out for a few hours, rip around some trails and come back home rather than, you know, go out for a big adventure on the Tuareg. So I'm just trying to find ways in which I can keep having fun with motorcycles that fits my life today, if that makes sense. The Flemin has asked, could you explain what communicative means when you say feel what the front wheel is doing? I'm on my 2nd season and have over 10,000 miles and I have no idea what you're talking about. So I mentioned this when the guy was asking about his Rebel 500 and leaning over. It's really hard to explain, but as you ride more and more, you're gonna get a sense of what the front tire is doing. We talk about it communicating to you, right? Every bike communicates different things based on its suspension, based on its geometry, based on its rake and trail. It's gonna all do different stuff. And there's times where it does predictable things and the bike feels good and stable and planted. You know, you brake hard into a corner, you feel the front end squish, it does stuff you want it to do. There's other times it's a little more numb, a little more not as communicative. I actually just had this problem on the Yamaha R7, which I'm gonna talk about in my review that's coming out in a couple of days from now, the time that this video goes live. Not a very communicative bike, a bit numb feeling, a little confused, a little strange. And I have these theories as to why that is, for me, not a very communicative motorcycle. But, you know, as you ride different bikes, you'll see that they kind of all tell you different things. And you're like, oh, okay, like I can do this, the bike wants me to do this, or if I do this, it does that. Every time you ride a motorcycle, it is a conversation. The bike is telling you things, you're telling the bike things with inputs. That's how we talk to the motorcycle, right? You give the bike inputs, and then it gives you outputs and it gives you inputs sometimes like, hey, don't do that, or hey, try this, oh, do this. And so I just find that there's a conversation that happens with the bike. That's how I view it. I don't know if anybody else does, but that's just what I think. All right, last question for the day. Ethan Grand Prix has asked, Sir Papa Yam, sir, if you were given the opportunity to ride a current generation MotoGP bike, which would you choose? And do you think you keep it on track / two wheels while actually pushing? Man, that's a great question. So first of all, I would, if this is a world in which they're like, hey, here's a GP bike, ride it, I would say, please don't give me carbon brakes because I don't think I'm good enough to actually use them. And then please put the most forgiving tire possible on it that an amateur road racer would understand. Because MotoGP tires are super specific. Those bikes are super tuned to work in very extreme environments, right? And the carbon brakes are designed for MotoGP rider inputs, which I absolutely do not possess. I have amateur, novice, club racing inputs that are fine, but they're not MotoGP inputs, of course. So all that to say, could I keep it on track and on two wheels? I think I could. I think I could ride a bike. I think I could ride a MotoGP bike around a track and not bin it. I mean, I'm not that bad at riding motorcycles. I'm actually pretty decent. I know my way around a racetrack, especially if it was a racetrack that I knew. I would give it a shot. I think the top end power would just like blow me away. People talk about how smooth the seamless gearboxes are and the power delivery is just like infinite, revs to 20,000 RPM or something like that. I think it would just be a magical, magical experience. Everybody who's an amateur that has ridden a MotoGP bike always says it is the greatest bike they have ever ridden. So if I ever got the chance, that would be amazing. Now, which one would I want to ride? Factory Ducati bike. Come on, give me the best of the best. Or that new Aprilia looks really, really sweet too. I think that would be really amazing. But to be honest, maybe if any GP bike is up for grabs, maybe one of the old 990s, maybe the Honda, the RC 211V, the old one, the one that Rossi had. That would be a really good one. Maybe one of the old M1s would be good too. But those are a little more hairy, I think. Maybe that would be a little more scary hairy to ride at actual pace, whatever my pace ends up being with that bike. But yeah, man, I recently saw that they had a Ducati experience where they got some journalists and some national level racers to ride their GP bikes. I saw that Kayla Yakov from Moto America got to ride one, which was so cool for her. Very, very awesome. So yeah, maybe someday Papa Yams will get to ride one. I don't know, but probably not. All right, boys, that's going to wrap it up for today's Q&A. I do appreciate it. Drop some comments down below in this video. That's how you get your questions featured in the next one. I'll catch you in the next video. See you later.